When Barron Trump stepped into a high-end restaurant, he never imagined his MAGA hat would ignite such a public clash. What unfolded next stunned the manager and left an entire city buzzing. It was a bright, sunny afternoon in Los Angeles, the kind of day that makes you want to take things slow and savor each moment. Barron Trump, now in his late teens, had spent a quiet morning engrossed in reading and decided to reward himself with a nice lunch. His choice: La Raza, a prestigious restaurant celebrated for its mix of elegance and exclusivity. This was the kind of place where every table had a story to tell. Celebrities, business moguls, and social media influencers often filled the seats. Barron had dined there before, always appreciating its calm atmosphere and flawless service. As he entered through the sleek glass doors, Barron naturally stood out, not just because of his height, but due to the bold red MAGA hat resting confidently on his head. He wore it casually, not to make a statement or stir up trouble, but simply as a comfortable expression of who he was. The hostess, a poised woman in her mid-30s, greeted him warmly and led him to a cozy corner table. The restaurant wasn't busy. A handful of diners quietly sipped wine, their conversations hushed. Barron opened the menu, his face serene, scanning for his go-to meal. At first, he didn't catch the glances, the man at the neighboring table whispering to his partner, or the staff exchanging murmurs by the bar. But then, the manager appeared. A man in his mid-40s, dressed sharply, with a firm voice and determined stride, approached Barron's table. His expression was resolute. "Excuse me," he began, his tone loud enough to draw eyes from around the room. "We have a strict policy against political attire. I'm going to have to ask you to take off the hat." Barron looked up, clearly caught off guard. But Barron wasn't shaken. Calmly, he removed his earbuds and placed them neatly on the table. "I wasn't aware of such a policy," he said, his voice steady, respectful but firm. "It's outlined in our code of conduct," the manager replied, gesturing vaguely toward the entrance. "We aim to maintain a neutral environment for all our guests." Barron tilted his head slightly, considering his options. He scanned the room. Some diners were feigning indifference, while others openly watched the exchange. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said in a neutral tone. "I just came for lunch." The manager's posture grew more rigid. "You need to remove the hat, or I'll have to ask you to leave." Barron paused, his expression hard to read. Then, with a small nod, he slid his chair back and stood. "If that's your stance," he said evenly, "then I'll go." The room fell silent, thick with discomfort, as Barron gathered his belongings. Leaving behind an untouched glass of water, he walked out of the restaurant, closing the door softly behind him. Yet, the tension he left behind lingered like a heavy cloud. Outside, Barron stopped for a moment. The warm California breeze brushed his face as he adjusted his hat, almost as if reaffirming his choice to wear it. He took a deep breath, not angry, but frustrated and, more than anything, disappointed. He'd been raised to approach others with kindness, even when disagreements arose. This, however, felt like a betrayal of that principle. Back inside the restaurant, murmurs broke the uneasy silence. A waiter leaned in toward the manager and whispered, "Do you think that was the right move?" That was him. The manager brushed it off with a wave. "We can't make exceptions. Letting him stay sends the wrong message. It's my restaurant, and I'll run it the way I see fit." Meanwhile, Barron wandered a few blocks to a quiet public park. Spotting an empty bench, he sat down and pulled out his phone. First, he messaged his mother to let her know what had happened. Then, he texted a few close friends, not seeking sympathy, but clarity. Was he overreacting? Was the manager justified? Responses came swiftly. One friend wrote, "That's ridiculous." "They shouldn't have done that." Another added, "You handled it better than I would have." As he read through the messages, an idea began to take shape, not driven by revenge or drama, but by a desire to create something meaningful. If the restaurant aimed to avoid political statements, why not promote understanding and unity instead? Determined, Barron stood up, his resolve clear. He began making calls, his tone calm but purposeful. "Hey, I need your help with something," he said into the phone, initiating the first of many conversations that would set his plan in motion. Back at the restaurant, unease lingered. Word of the incident spread quickly across social media as other diners shared their perspectives online. They kicked Barron Trump out for wearing a hat, one post read, accompanied by a photo of the moment. Another added, "So much for freedom of expression at La Racer." The manager, now sitting at the bar and scrolling through his phone, felt a knot tightening in his stomach. Comments began flooding in, and not all of them were supportive. "Let them say what they want," he muttered, trying to dismiss the growing sense of regret. But deep down, he knew the situation was spiraling out of control. By the time Barron got home, the story had already started gaining traction online. Local influencers had begun picking it up, their captions ranging from supportive to controversial. Barron skimmed through the posts briefly, his expression thoughtful. But Barron didn't linger on the posts or let them consume his thoughts. He wasn't interested in fueling drama or further dividing people. His attention shifted toward finding a way to turn this negative experience into something positive. Sitting at his desk, Barron opened a small leather-bound notebook and began jotting down ideas. He reflected on the day, the interaction with the manager, the reactions from onlookers, the silent judgments and the curious glances. What could he do to spark dialogue instead of conflict? He wanted to challenge the divisiveness, but in a way that felt personal and impactful. Then it hit him, almost like a flash of inspiration. A public fundraiser. Not just any fundraiser, but one centered on a powerful, unifying message. He imagined an event that would support underprivileged communities, particularly by fostering safe spaces for open conversation and understanding. Without hesitation, he picked up his phone and dialed. "Hi, this is Barron Trump. I need some advice on setting up a charity event." "Yes, it's urgent. Could we meet tomorrow?" The person on the other end sounded surprised, but quickly agreed. As the evening unfolded, Barron's plan began taking form. He sketched out a proposal for the fundraiser, deciding to hold it right outside La Teresa. The location itself would underline the message. Even places marked by conflict could become symbols of unity. A close friend offered to assist with logistics, and within hours, the groundwork was laid. Meanwhile, back at the restaurant, the repercussions of the incident continued to escalate. What had started as a single decision was now the center of a heated public debate. News outlets began picking up the story, quoting eyewitnesses. Some reports cast Barron as a victim of intolerance, while others defended the restaurant's right to enforce its policies. The restaurant's social media pages were overwhelmed with comments. Some users commended the manager for standing firm, while others called for a boycott, accusing the restaurant of hypocrisy. One comment read, "Neutral space? Kicking someone out isn't neutral, it's taking a side." The impact was palpable. Regular customers cancelled their reservations, and the once bustling restaurant grew noticeably quieter. The staff at La Racer could feel the strain, and the manager, who had initially stood by his decision with confidence, now found himself second-guessing. He told himself the controversy would pass, that things would go back to normal. But deep down, he wasn't so sure. As night settled, Barron continued preparing for the next step. He understood the fundraiser wouldn't erase what had happened, but it had the potential to shift the narrative, to offer something hopeful and constructive amid the fallout. But Barron hoped his actions might shift the narrative, away from conflict and toward something meaningful. The world didn't need more shouting matches. It needed opportunities for connection, even in the most unexpected places. The next morning, the quiet block in front of La Teresa began to buzz with activity. Trucks unloaded equipment while volunteers set up tables, banners, and a small stage. Barron stood at the center of it all, ensuring every detail was just right. Above the stage, a bold banner proclaimed, "United we stand, building bridges, not walls." Barron had reached out to organizations focused on community building, youth mentorship, and fostering dialogue. This wasn't just a fundraiser. It was an effort to create a space where people from all walks of life could come together. Food trucks, live music, and charity booths lined the sidewalk, transforming a scene of division into a vibrant community gathering. By midday, a diverse crowd began to assemble. Families, young professionals, activists, and even a few recognizable faces from social media. Barron took the microphone, his voice steady but layered with emotion. "Yesterday, I was asked to leave this restaurant because of a hat," he began. "And that's okay. I respect their policies, even if I don't agree with them. But what struck me wasn't being turned away. It was something bigger. We've become so quick to judge each other, to take sides, to shut down conversations. That's not who we are. We can do better." The audience responded with applause, and Barron continued, "This event isn't about me, and it's not about them. It's about all of us, finding ways to listen, to understand, and to come together. The funds we raise today will support programs that foster dialogue and inclusion. Thank you for being here and showing that unity is stronger than division." The applause was louder this time, and Barron stepped off the stage, personally greeting attendees, shaking hands, and expressing his gratitude. His composed demeanor and heartfelt message left a lasting impression on those present, many who came out of curiosity but departed feeling genuinely inspired. Inside La Teresa, however, the mood was entirely different. The manager stood by the window, watching the event unfold with a mix of surprise and unease. He hadn't anticipated this kind of response from Barron, and it left him conflicted. Some of the restaurant staff couldn't resist the pull of the lively music and vibrant atmosphere, and had stepped outside to join the fundraiser. One waiter, who had been present during the previous day's incident, returned to the bar and spoke softly. "You should go out there. Talk to him." The manager stiffened. "This isn't my fight." "Maybe not," the waiter replied, "but it could be your chance." The manager didn't respond immediately, but his posture relaxed slightly. He poured a glass of water and turned back to the window, watching as the crowd outside continued to swell. Something about the scene tugged at him, a feeling he hadn't allowed himself to acknowledge until now. As the day progressed, the fundraiser outside La Teresa became the talk of the town. Social media buzzed with live streams, photos, and hashtags like #BuildingBridges and #UnitedWeStand, celebrating Barron's poise and the positive message he championed. The event drew more than just local attention. News crews arrived to capture the energy of the crowd and Barron's impactful speeches. Inside the restaurant, however, the atmosphere was somber. The once bustling dining room, typically booked weeks in advance, sat eerily empty. The few patrons who did show up seemed distracted, glancing toward the lively event outside as if they were missing out on something more significant. The manager tried to focus on his work, but his mind wandered to the growing crowd and the undeniable shift happening just beyond the restaurant's doors. The tension within La Teresa was becoming impossible for the manager to ignore. One of the servers cautiously approached him. "Some customers are asking about the event," the server said. "They're saying it looks incredible. Maybe we should go out there." The manager's jaw tightened, but he didn't reply. Instead, he retreated to his office, closing the door behind him. Sitting at his desk, he stared at his computer screen. His inbox was overflowing, complaints from customers, cancelled reservations, and even sharp critiques from local media outlets. One email caught his eye. It was from a regular, someone who had always been loyal and supportive. "I've always loved La Teresa," the email began. "But yesterday's incident was deeply disappointing. Removing someone over their personal beliefs isn't the neutrality you claim to stand for. It's divisive. I hope you find a way to make this right." The words struck him harder than he expected. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. Was his decision really about neutrality? Or was it driven by something else, something he wasn't ready to admit? Meanwhile, the fundraiser outside was in full swing. A jazz band filled the air with music, kids painted murals at an art booth, and donation boxes overflowed with contributions. Barron moved through the crowd, shaking hands, listening to stories, and even stopping for selfies. His calm, genuine demeanor left an impression. It was clear he wasn't there to show off, but to make a difference. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the lively scene, a ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. People turned toward the restaurant doors. The manager had stepped outside. Adjusting his tie nervously, he hesitated on the steps before making his way toward Barron. The crowd fell quiet, parting slightly to give him space. Barron noticed him approaching and offered a polite smile. Without flinching, Barron extended his hand. "I'd like to talk," the manager said, his voice barely audible over the hum of the event. "Of course," Barron replied, motioning toward a quieter area on the edge of the gathering. They walked together as the crowd watched silently, giving them respectful distance. Stopping near the outskirts, the manager's usually composed demeanor showed cracks of unease. He glanced at the crowd, then back at Barron. "I need to start by saying, I didn't handle things well yesterday," the manager admitted, his voice low. "I thought I was doing what was best for my restaurant and staff, but I realize now I made a mistake. I judged you unfairly and acted out of fear, not fairness." Barron listened attentively, his expression calm and encouraging. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong," he said after a moment. "Thank you for saying that." The manager let out a deep breath, as though a weight had been lifted. "Watching what you've done today, it's humbling. You could have retaliated or turned this into an attack on my business, but instead, you created something positive. Most people wouldn't have done that." Barron smiled faintly. "I don't think the world needs more anger or division. Yesterday could have added to the noise, but I wanted to show there's a better way." The manager nodded slowly. "You did. And I'd like to support what you're doing. If there's a way for me, or the restaurant, to contribute, I'd be happy to." Barron thought for a moment before responding. "The best contribution? Reflect on how we treat each other. Policies matter, but they shouldn't come at the expense of kindness and understanding. Maybe La Teresa could host an event like this one, something that brings people together instead of driving them apart." The manager blinked, caught off guard, but then a small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "That's a great idea. Let's make it happen." They shook hands again, this time with genuine warmth. The crowd, sensing the resolution, erupted in applause. Not the polite, obligatory kind, but heartfelt, a recognition of the significance of the moment. As the fundraiser wound down, Barron took the stage one last time to thank everyone who had supported the cause. He ended with a simple but powerful message. "We all make mistakes. What matters is how we grow from them." Today wasn't just about raising money. It was about proving that even in disagreement, we can find common ground. Thank you for showing that unity isn't just possible, it's necessary." The crowd erupted into cheers, their voices echoing with hope and energy. As the sun set over Los Angeles, Barron stood with his friends and family, watching the last of the attendees leave. They didn't just carry memories of a successful event, they carried its message. This story reminds us that conflicts, whether big or small, don't have to lead to bitterness. With grace, understanding, and proactive solutions, even the most challenging moments can become opportunities for connection and growth.